Houston and Texas Tech was explosive the first time around, and this time the whole league might be on the line.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is a crossover edition of Locked On Coogs and Locked On Texas Tech. I'm your host, Locked On Coogs Party, joined by Chris Level of Texas Tech. Chris, I hope we're not kicking, and we're kicking it, but we're not kicking it, right? That's not that's not what we're doing today. I generally open with funny food questions, and there's tortilla questions to be had. We got too much real basketball going on, so only thing I'll ask is not for what you throw, but for what you eat at Taco in. Do you put in corn or flour tortilla?
It depends. Depends on what I'm consuming, or I think there's a place for both. Depending on how your street tacos, corn tortillas, like the fajitas, other stuff. Yeah, it's flour. So, any kind of burrito, obviously enchiladas, save for the corn, but yeah, street tacos and all that stuff. Corn. I do think I probably if consumed separately, maybe with like butter on it or whatever you're doing, corn tortillas. It's a nice touch, man. Like roll that bad boy up, a little butter, maybe a little honey involved, or dip it in some queso. I don't know, but a corn tortilla, when done well, is chef kisses there. Yes, so. Chef
kiss.
Yes.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, and I promise we're going to get into more than just tortillas in a second. We had a big basketball game on Monday night. FanDuel's got the line at 1.5. Ken Palm's got this super close. The first one to a 1 point in overtime. Chris, what's the vibe in Lubbock about? Because they won the first one, and I feel like there's still some sense of revenge here. I can't quite get a grasp on what's going on in Lubbock with this.
Well, I mean, okay, so one, they're not going to throw tortillas tonight. Okay, that's just reserved for football games when kickoffs happen and all that stuff. So yeah, so if there's any Houston fans, it'll be at the United Supermarkets Arena tonight. You don't have to be concerned about getting hit in the head with a tortilla or anything like that. I would guess both coaches will come into this thing trying to play certain cards that have to do with chip on their shoulder, revenge, all the stuff. And like, Parker, what's interesting is technically what's on the line? Like what actually, truth be told, is on the line here? I don't really know if there is much on the line. And that's what is kind of fascinating about this, because if either team loses this game or either team wins it, I don't know how much you gain. And if you lose it, I don't know how much you lose. Yes, it's another win. It's another big-time quad one resume win. Both of these teams have plenty of those already. It's going to be, I mean, for obviously Houston, they're trying to win the regular season title. It would take a monumental collapse for Houston not to win the regular season title. I think Tech's hopes went out the window a week ago in Fort Worth when you couldn't get that win. Houston's been able to survive going to Lawrence, Kansas, and that trip to Orlando. They didn't get tripped up ever. And there's just, again, you would have to win the game tonight if you're Texas Tech, and then have Houston, the wheels would have to come off and a couple more opportunities. And I just don't foresee that happening. But what's really on the line? And that's what makes this a fun one, because you really can just look at this and say, it's a great game, an unbelievable opportunity, and an unbelievable resume win. Whereas if you don't get it done, it's like, okay, well, the Big 12 is hard. Sports are hard. Winning on the road is hard. Beating Houston is hard. And then you just chalk it up. So that's these are unique, I guess is what I'm saying, when you have two top 10 teams potentially that would be playing and going off against each other.
Yeah, and I should preface that, I mean, they are 1-2 in the Big 12 right now. Houston's got, I believe it's a 3-game lead.
Correct.
Tech would, if they won this one, have the ultimate tiebreaker with both wins, right? I think the tiebreaker is a little murky if Houston wins because they each have a road win in it or whatever, right? But this is kind of like, if Houston were to win every game after Tech, I guess this might not matter quite as much. But
like they've done the rest of the rest of the conference schedule. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like, well, and I will say, Houston, Tech, Arizona, Iowa State, the four of them have kind of separated themselves, and scheduling did Houston some favors and only getting Arizona, Iowa State once each, right? Texas Tech's the one in that bunch that got to play twice. And And so what you're saying here is that you're seeing this as kind of just like, hey, this is more of a qualitative measure of where we're at, not a quantitative one.
Yeah, I mean, I again, could Houston lose a couple more games in their final three? I mean, yeah, it's certainly possible. And some teams have played them close and all that. I'm just saying, I'm trying to be realistic, I guess is my point. So, and it will require you to beat them tonight and then have that happen. So you're telling me they're going to lose 3 out of the last 4 after they've just won 15 out of their first 16. You see what I'm saying? And again, sports are crazy. Like, we'll get into the first matchup between these two, and it still, in some ways, makes no sense that Texas Tech pulled it off. No Kevin Overton, no JT Toppin, no head coach. And you went in the lion's den and ate the lion. I mean, you got it done. And so sports happen sometimes. So my point is that I just think this is a very unique scenario to where you almost can kind of sit back and truly enjoy it and not stress as much about the result. I'm saying like you and I can, the fans.
Right. McCasland and Sampson are both very stressed. You and I are not.
Or if you're just a fan of either program, because there's not great consequences to suffer if your team doesn't get it done tonight in what is expected to be a very close game. And maybe it won't be. Maybe some team will show up tonight and they'll shoot the lights out and they'll win this thing by double digits. Who knows? Maybe some team shows up tired or injured or whatever. You get my point. But that it's unique this late in the year in a 20-game schedule where you have a game on paper that's like, oh my. And yet I don't really know if it alters the course of the conference race or anything like that. So that's my only the point that I was trying to bring up.
Well, and so the conference race is really about seeding in the conference tournament. And obviously both teams want to win every game left. I mean, but like you're trying to kind of edge out for seeds and things like that. You know, and this is, I guess, more of a measure to ask Texas Tech fans. And Houston fans have been very firm since the American Athletic Conference days that winning a conference regular season title is a lot harder to do.
It is.
Is that kind of the Tech vibe too? Or are they trying to,
yes.
I mean, are they trying to get set up for March? What's the thought there?
Yeah, you would love to win either one of them, whether it's the tournament title and the automatic bid or the regular season. Yes. But I mean, I don't think there's anybody around here that's going to tell you that winning the regular season is not, it's harder. It's more special. I mean, you did it. You shared it in 19 when you went to the Final Four. You shared the league, the regular season title that year. It's just very difficult to do, especially so in a year when you're playing 20 conference games. I think that really, and I think that the selection committee for the tournament values it as such because it's a 2.5 month long test as opposed to 1 weekend. I mean, like it's really no comparison, honestly. And would I love to win the Big 12 tournament? Absolutely. Don't misunderstand, but which one is harder? Really, you can't even. That's not even close. And that's what should carry a lot more weight. And I think it does with the selection committee and all the things that when you start weighing it out. So, because sometimes teams and coaches they'll kind of look at that old conference tournament and go, "Yeah, man, we're going to pass. We're going to sit this guy down. If we lose early." So be it. Like, it's not the worst thing. Let's go home. Let's get some rest. Let's hit the reset button. The end, right? And everybody wants to win every game, right? But but we also know that some of this does go on, and you try to spin it if you do drop one and all that. So,
well, and the 20 conference regular season games, I also stretch is like such a chaotic thing. We're not doing it again next year, right? Like it's been such a detriment.
Or ever again.
Everyone's beat up. Everyone's banged up. Everyone's got a knee, a groin, an ankle. Like it's really worn a lot of these guys down because especially in this conference, that's 20 the worst quad 2 games. I mean, like legitimately, like it's a lot of really high end basketball being played every single week, twice a week. I want to get into the high quality game that got played between two teams last time, as well as kind of how that plays into some sort of revenge and things like that in a second. But first, today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, and March basketball is just around the corner. There's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily sports. With Prize Picks, you can pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you get up to 1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, and keeps every game exciting. You can look at different lineups throughout the week, kind of pick and play different guys from the NBA or Major League Baseball as we get into that season very, very soon. Fast payouts, money hits very quickly, as little as 15 minutes. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 off, or $50 instantly, after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, Chris, as far as running games go, there was a stretch in the first half right after all the ejections when these two teams played the first time, where I was like, Houston's going to get run out of the gym. like it seemed to ignite Texas Tech. I looked at in the post game on my own show, looking at like how well they shot relative to their season averages and how well they shot relative to the second half. It's like Texas Tech seemed really sparked by that. Without debriefing the shouldn't have been, shouldn't whatever, do you feel like that spark is still there? Full disclosure, I should stress to a Texas Tech fan, I probably would have called it a flagrant one, play on, right? But like whatever, that's not why we're here. Do you think the spark's still there after that? Because those guys were angry.
Yeah, and like if you want to call a flagrant one, if you want to that would have been fine. But it's like that keeps JT Toppin in the game, that keeps Grant McCaslin in the game, and then we just salute and move on down the road, right? And nobody told anybody anything. There was no explanations. I digress. Because I was on the
Chris
broadcast.
Might still be mad.
Well, no, I just didn't like the transparency. Like communicate and like explain, and you're calling technicals from across the court, and you're just not letting. That's what I had a huge issue with, as well as the actual call. And if you have to go by the letter of the law, there's got to be some common sense. Like you're telling me this kid did this on purpose on national television 3.5 minutes into the game, with these teams ranked. I mean, like, what are we doing here? And he was shocked. He had no idea. He was like, so okay. I think that's fair to say that if that doesn't happen, I don't know if Texas Tech wins this game. I think that's very fair to say. I think Kelvin Sampson is he talks a lot about culture, and I've been familiar. I've been doing this a long time in Lubbock, and obviously when Coach Sampson was at Oklahoma years ago, when Coach Knight was here, they had their rivalry, you're back and forth and all that. And Chris Beard, who was here, is a really good friend of Kelvin Sampson. But Coach Sampson often talks about culture, and he will say a lot that you can't. It's not something you can touch, but you can see it. You can't reach out and put your hands on it, but you can see it, and you know it when you see it. And I think that, to his credit, he complimented the DNA and the culture of what Grant's team had that particular day. And he was like, they rallied, and it was next man up, and they kind of played for each other. I mean, all the cliches we hear, but I think that was dead on. I mean, I just don't know if it turns out the same way, if not for that boneheaded call that was made, and then boneheaded ejections, plural, and all the stuff. I don't know if we're having the same conversation. But sports are fun, and they're frustrating, and they're all the things in between. But that night, it was like my emotions were running the gamut. It was like I felt everything you could possibly feel in that building that night, like anger, frustration, happiness, glee, shock, everything. And it was just all on display. And yet Houston hasn't lost since. But I think to your point, Parker, is that I think they did rally around that scenario. And I'm surprised there wasn't more shock there, like, uh-oh. Because that's kind of what I thought. I'm like, how are you supposed to go about this? Because I'm already thinking, like, you only play 8 dudes. And Kevin Overton was sitting over there. He's one of your guards that subs in and plays a ton of minutes. He wasn't playing that day either. And then you get one of your best scorers and your best rebounder. And he had 0 points, 1 rebound in like 4 minutes. Okay, now he's gone. Like, how? And now Jeff Linder's over there coaching it, and yet you somehow pulled this off. I mean, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
To Linder's credit, he was a head coach. I think they said Wyoming on the telecast. Yep. I didn't know that
last year. Yeah, he had a lot of experience as a head coach.
So it's not like he was completely out of his
Right.
element, but it certainly wasn't one he expected to be in, to say the
No.
least.
And your whole game plan. It's like, not only did
Yeah.
I expect to be, but okay, if you do throw me in this, well, I'm just going to call a lot of ISOs to JT. So it's like everything that you would have wanted to had to do, you're having to do it on the fly. And it's funny, after the game was over, he was like, man, everybody around here acting like I've never won any games before. He was kind of having some fun with it because he's pretty good at Wyoming there for a stretch.
Well, and so what's interesting is the flip side of that coin is like Houston, I feel like, is trying to save from what I think outsiders, and I say outsiders, saw as embarrassing. Like, how do you lose to a team without their coach and best player? And I do think that Houston's kind of got that chip on their shoulder because anyone that watched that game, anyone who has watched Texas Tech, anyone that knows, like I said, these two programs knows that like it's not crazy the team would win without their best player, right? Like both teams, I think, are capable of that. But I do think Houston's trying to shake that off because, for whatever it's worth, Selection Sunday is people making decisions, and like that could knock you from a 1 to a 2 if you're in Houston's seat, and
Sure.
you want to kind of make a statement that, hey, that was a one-time thing. It's only the 7th time Houston's been beaten in the Fertitta Center since it was built. I mean, like it does have a stench that you're trying to shake off. I think if you're Houston, McCaslin leaving the game has to be saying, I want my shot, though, right? That I think is the bigger revenge story. Maybe I'm wrong.
Or Toppin. Yeah, because see, here's the thing. I mean, JT is in a lot of mock first-round drafts, okay? And one of the things I thought, I mean, he's playing this year with the thought that he would come here. He went through the NBA process last year. He's a phenomenal scorer and all the things. And, like, what do NBA people look at? Well, they look at when you play really good teams and really good players like Roberts and Francis and Tugler and all that stuff. And so I'm sure he felt cheated out of an opportunity to show NBA people, here's what I can do against legit defenders, legit bigs, legit guys, and a good coach like Kelvin Sampson. And like I that was taken from me. And maybe he plays tonight against it and it doesn't go well, and it's like, well, okay, I mean, there's that too. But I'm saying, yeah, I would say that these two, the head coach, because they sat in the locker room and watched this thing together and then got to meet with their team at halftime. I just probably a big time bonding experience too, because like what a unique situation.
Wild.
What a unique yeah, absolutely wild. And then they took a picture together after it was over, and it was like, they're just smiling because I mean they were just stuck back there, and with only to watch the TV monitor and all that stuff. So, anyways, it's just again wild set of circumstances, but both teams are probably better off for it that happened. Certainly Tech was because they got a win, but I'm sure that there was a lot of positives that Kelvin Sampson could pull from because he kept yelling at Juwan Roberts that day. Like, they had Francis goes out with a concussion. Roberts turned his ankle. He came back in, and Kelvin Sampson's over there going heart, like, fight through and all that. And so there's plenty of two really good coaches here to pull from that game and use tonight or to learn from their teams in the last several weeks, I would guess, too.
And obviously, Houston's been on a little bit of an anger run since and has won a handful. Like I said, I think it's 6 games in a row since that matchup. Was there any impact you saw out of Tech, good or bad, in the following games and days? I mean, that can take a lot out of a team emotionally. It's a big road trip. Or is it just kind of another game under a very stressful schedule as always?
Well, you file this one away under, like, I have for a bit maybe tried to focus on what's wrong with this Texas Tech team instead of focusing on all the things that are right and that are look good. But this one falls into the category of look at what they've done without certain, because they've won a Big 12, and Houston's had their issues too, right? We're missing some guys here and there, but they've just won a game without Chance McMillan playing. They've won a game without Darion Williams playing. They won that particular game large in part without JT Toppin playing, played 4 minutes, and no Kevin Overton. They've been out without JT Toppin for a month. They've been without Federico, their backup big guy, for about 3 or 4 games at one point. Christian Anderson and Elijah Hawkins, their starting point guard and one of their top guards off the bench, missed a handful of games at the beginning of the season. My point is they've been able to figure it out. Whatever they have available, they've been able to figure it out. And that's what is like look what you're capable of here. I mean, like, and sometimes teams need every piece, and to certain things have to go right. And yet there's a lot of different paths to victory here for this Texas Tech team, to which, hand to God, I would have told you that night when that happened, I thought this isn't going to end well at all. Like,
Yeah.
And yet it did. And like, that's the beautiful thing about sports and guys playing hard for each other and all that stuff. So I would tell you that as much as that took out of your team, the double overtime affair with Arizona State about a week and a half ago was the damnedest thing I'd ever seen. I felt like that would take a lot out of them. And so they've been through some of these crazy. I mean, like that affair up in Lawrence, Kansas that you guys were in. Yeah. When Coach Sampson's like, I still don't know how we won this game. I don't either. I don't, but you did, and that's all that matters. Culture wins, and all that. So that's what's fun about this league and about good teams, is they just sometimes just figure out a way.
And I want to talk about who's going to figure out that way tonight in a second, because I do think seeing kind of how the chess pieces move could be interesting. But before we get to that, today's show is brought to you, like I said at the top, by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When the game tips off, NBA, NCAA, whatever action is getting started, there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. Even if you miss the action of the opening tip or want to get in on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action with bigger payouts. You can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. It's hard to do in Texas, but I promise it's really fun to get on. You get the live betting features going with every moment of the game. It keeps it exciting all the way throughout. Plus, the app is very easy to use. When you win, you can get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com, join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Chris, FanDuel has this as a Houston -1.5, over-under set at 132.5. They're predicting that seems like something in the mid to high 60s. Nothing too crazy here. One team might get to 70, right? That's all we're looking at. Close game. And I would also predict a close game. I have to admit, being a favorite in Lubbock feels weird, and I don't know that I like it. We talked in pre-pod, weird things happen in Lubbock all the time. Football, basketball, I'm sure real life too, whatever, right? Like, it just seems like the kind of place where weird things tend to happen. Houston being favored makes Tech fans think what?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, if you're Coach Sampson, you're saying, hey, they beat us. Look at all these happy pictures and videos that were shot after that game, and it was embarrassing, or whatever card you want to play there, and trying to rekindle the emotions there. Now, if you're Grant, it's like, dude, we beat these guys one time. We have no respect. However you want to play, however you want to play the card there. But I was, before I saw this number, I thought there was a chance you would be like a half point, 1 point, whether it be pick 'em. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really interesting if you're like a favorite, which wouldn't have surprised me. But I would have then like, well, that's even more for Coach Sampson to utilize and present to his guys. But if I'm Grant McCaslin now, I'm like saying, I'm using that. Absolutely, not that you get into point spreads and stuff with your kids, but yeah, being an underdog and whatever. So I think most Tech fans would probably rationalize the point spread. Chance McMillan missed the previous game over the weekend, and maybe that factors into this a little bit too. So I don't know. But I think that, like, you're right. We're going to get a game that is going to come down to a few possessions, and maybe we don't. But I fully expect us to be like a really good college basketball game that comes down to a call or a turnover or a big shot, whatever. Because, like, think about Darion Williams. Think about Darion Williams burying that three at the end of regulation in the first one, and it was a kind of a early in the shot clock. I'm going, what is he doing? Great shot. That is unbelievable. I mean, like, you're like, no, yes, that's really good. But that's kind of what it came down to, And so I expect this to be the same.
Can we please not come down to a call though? Like I can't do that.
Oh no, you know what I meant. But yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
I will say you mentioned his name a couple times. I was thoroughly impressed with Chance McMillan in the first matchup. I think it was kind of coming on the radar for a lot of Big 12 folks. Certainly, kind of guys like, oh, he's a good scorer. And then all of a sudden he like really had a great game in that first one. I have to say though, I wonder if there's a chance like it. You've seen him play all year long. Can JT Toppin be like too amped, too much like it's my turn, too much like I'm trying to get 2 games worth of stuff out? Or like, is it some kids are like that, some kids aren't? You know him better than I do. Is that a possibility here where he's like trying to get it all out of his system?
Yeah, that's the one fun thing about probably I would say that the same because I know Malik Wilson still from his time here, and I always try to say hello to him when he's a great kid, phenomenal kid. But like Malik's, I'll just use him as an example here. His body language or his emotional, he's pretty much like this all the time. Like you don't know, good, bad, whatever. It's like yes, sir. And he's just going to play hard. I bury a 3 at the end of regulation in Houston to send my team to overtime against Kansas. And it's like he's not running around doing victory laps and all that. He just stayed even keel. There's a lot of those kids on this Texas Tech roster, and I think that benefits them greatly because they haven't shown that they don't get rattled. There's a lot of high IQ. There's a lot of maturity. And JT is one of those. Like you don't know – like sometimes people like before they got to know him at the beginning of the season, they're like, dude, what's he pouting over there for? No, that's just like, he's just kind of chill. And he has the same look on his face, good, bad, doesn't really smile or talk much. He just kind of goes. So with him, I don't necessarily worry about it. Now there may be a time where he'll take, he hadn't touched it in a few possessions and he'll throw up a 3-pointer just because it's like, I want to get it. I want to shoot it and maybe force something, but he hasn't really played outside of what he's capable of really much at all this season. I think that's a compliment. But I can see the reason why you would ask the question. And fortunately, you don't really have many of those guys, but I don't think Houston does either. There's not a whole lot of, I got to get mine. I'm selfish. Like get me the ball. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to do too much. I may take bad shots or turn it over. I don't really see much of that with either team.
Yeah, I didn't think McCaslin would have a bunch of those guys running around. He's new. He missed the first game. I have no idea. I will say that I would predict Houston wins a close, less than 2 possession kind of game. And I kind of feel like Emanuel Sharp's going to be a key figure here. We saw LJ Cryer go off over the weekend. Sharp is a great shooter, but has kind of had high and low moments throughout the season as far as scoring totals go. Chance McMillan, we mentioned, played the game of his life, not the game of his life, the best game I'd seen him play to that point early in the season. I'm sure there's been better since, but who are you? Is Toppin the X factor because he missed the first one, or what are you seeing as a big impact and how the results go from it?
Well, Toppin is the most interesting aspect because he's the best player that didn't play in the first matchup, and it will dictate how this game is played tonight. I'm curious, okay, how does Texas Tech try to utilize him? How does Houston try to defend them? We didn't really get but a few possessions of this in the first one, and so that kind of alters who gets the shots, where they come from, what defensive strategy you're using. Are they going to double him? They're going to just, what would we see? And that really affects just a lot of things. And can he be effective? Maybe he's a non-factor. Maybe I don't know, because I think that the first time it's like the 3-point shot had to be a factor for you. And it's like, dude, heave them up. You made 12 of them. But like, this is how we're going to have to win this game. And not that that's specifically why, but it had to be a reason why. And now you don't have to do that as much. So that to me, I'm kind of curious on the chess match that comes with that tonight, because we haven't seen what it's supposed to look like from really either team, other than, like I said, the handful of possessions. And so that is interesting to me. I will say, you mentioned Emanuel Sharp, and he was less than 100% in the first matchup. He had an ankle issue. He did play, wasn't very effective. I think Cryer is the guy that would make me the most nervous from the Texas Tech standpoint. You know what you're going to get from Roberts. The ball's going on that left elbow. He's getting to that left hand. He's going to try to get downhill and all that. That's going to be a problem. But Cryer, kind of if he's rolling, look out. And he's just a vet. He's an experienced guy. For Texas Tech, Christian Anderson, the freshman, he just went for 21 over the weekend against West Virginia. I think that he's been so good this year in a role that's just grown and grown, and he's very even keel, like I talked about with a lot of these guys. And it's just he had 10 in the first matchup, but he just gets it. He's a high IQ, high maturity guy. If he plays really well, Tech can win this game. Absolutely. If he doesn't, I wonder if they don't have enough, depending on what Chance McMillan's situation would be, that could dictate it. And if Chance isn't playing, Christian Anderson will start. If Chance plays, Christian Anderson will still play a ton of minutes, but would come off the bench. So that's I've talked long enough, but that's kind of what I would say from a personnel standpoint.
One that's really effectively creating kind of that third scorer you're talking about, right? Whether it's Anderson or McMillan, or whoever, you kind of need another guy to put some balls in the basket here. Now, Chris, as far as the game goes, you're on site, you're doing live stuff as well. What's Texas Tech doing after the game? We'll be live at Locked On Coogs. What are y'all doing after the game?
Well, I'll be I'm on the air with the radio broadcast with my man Jeff Haxton. So we won't go off the air until, I don't know, if the game starts at 8, probably get slid to 8:05. And the way this league's doing it, we may not even tip off until 9 o'clock. I don't know. But yeah, we'll do it. We'll be on the air, 45 minutes after the air. I will, as far as Locked On Texas Tech, though, they can get their coverage daily. We would do something with Casey Cowan and myself the morning after, as quickly as we can get to it, because I'm not staying up until midnight after going off the air 30 to 45 minutes after it's just a lot. So sorry, but that's just the reality of it. So we'll get to it eventually, win or lose, obviously. And you crush it with Locked On Coogs, and we have a lot of fun at each other's expense. But yeah, it's all fun. ELE, man, everybody love everybody, right?
I love everybody.
Love that. Love getting to work with you when we can, and we'll Locked On Texas Tech. We'll have it covered one way or the other.
One way or the other. It sounds like you need a nap, Chris. I'm going to let you get out of here. We're going to go on today.
Yeah, there you go.
Locked On Coogs, Locked On Texas Tech, crossover edition, Locked On Podcast Network means your team every day.